Hello, everyone. So today we have on our show Pankit, who is the founder of Sequretek. This is a cybersecurity startup. Pankit is an engineering graduate and MBA in marketing by education. For almost 25 years, he's worked very hard across different IT companies. He's held senior positions across Rolta, NTT Data, and Wipro Technologies. Let's welcome Pankit and understand more about his journey from him. Hi, Pankit. Thank you for
Hi,
joining
Anuradha.
the show.
Hi, Anuradha. Thank you for having me.
So, Pankit, let's start with early part of your journey. We would like the listeners to know more about your background, your family, education, early career, leading up to the story of, what made you start Sequretek.
So, it's a typical Indian middle class story. Was very fortunate to find myself with an amazing set of parents who, so I probably keep my age, I'm a 70 kid, right? So, more often than not, at that point of time, or the growing up process, parents decided everything for the kids.
Correct.
My case, they pretty much let me be whatever I wanted to. I mean, my dad wanted me to be a doctor. I didn't want to be a doctor. He held on to his horses and let me do what I wanted to do. I didn't want to study in Ahmedabad where my parents were. I wanted to go out and explore the world. So I left the city, went to a different city to study. So all through, I got the freedom that was slightly unusual at that point of time. Allowed me to spread my wings, make my own mistakes, and create my own journey. And I think that's what kind of formed the foundation of who I ended up becoming as an individual. Finished my engineering and then MBA and then joined a company called the CMC. Again, if I ever had to start working for an organization, I couldn't have found a better company than CMC. Though they were a public sector entity, the amount of learnings that I had, the kinds of bosses that I had, the freedom that I got, never in a day I felt that I was working for a PSU. And mind you, the princely salary of 3,800 rupees a month and no incentives, which was, I kind of thought that that's how the sales world would have seen itself. It's only later on I figured out that something called incentives as well. And people are still out going selling in the field in spite of not having a variable compensation. Just as for the culture of the organization, they gave you the amount of freedom to kind of go and make mistakes, go and pick up deals. Learned a lot. An ex-colleague of CMC left CMC, joined IBM, recommended me, moved to IBM. Again, another experience with IBM, I kind of got to work across cities. So I was in Ahmedabad, then I moved to Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore. So varieties of roles in the 4 years that I spent. So a lot of my career has been around moving. I mean, I think one common thread was either a change of location or change of role or change of a company. And that gave me a diversity of experiences that formed my character, allow me to explore various parts of the country. And then when I left IBM to join Wipro, allowed me to go to the US. And again, there I spent time across varieties of cities. Then got a chance to work for a private equity-backed company. They were not doing well. Private equity had just invested in them. And what ended up happening in the process is that it was my first taste of the upside that one can get, because I saw in that 5-year period that I was there, we were able to turn the company around, and the investors made significant amount of money. I mean, like 7 or 8x is what they ended up making.
Wow.
And I feel, wow, this is what you can end up doing if you really know how to play your cards, right? I had my 2 year stint with the acquired entity, which is NTT Data. And then I felt, let me come back to India and join a mid-sized company, Rolta, to again kind of craft the same journey of transformation. But by that time, this was in 2012, 13 time frame, the startup bug had already caught up in India, right? And you could see this new age companies coming up and everyone trying to do their own thing and kind of recreate the whole US Silicon Valley ecosystem out here. And though I was in my 40s at that point of time, I felt that maybe if ever there was a time to really take a leap of faith and get out of the corporate assurance, I always say that working for an organization and getting salary is like an opium drip that comes to you every end of the month. And even if you have any bright ideas of doing anything, and that salary comes dot on 31st or 1st, depending on when the payroll happens, and you forget everything about doing a company and start, going back to work, because surety is something that a corporate job gives you. Uh, but I had already started feeling that I've been doing this job for a better part of 20 years. And it was kind of more of the same, though I had changed my location, changed the company, changed some roles here and there, both the individual contributor role, the leadership roles, the management role, transformation roles. At the end, it was still just working for someone and executing on someone else's vision. And I just started got thinking as to what can we do differently. And Anand, who's my co-partner, he's also family, plus we work together. He also was a very similar stage in his life. He and I started talking about what can we do. And by that time, we had some money in the bank, so to say, where we could potentially take the risks. So we said, okay, let's do one thing. He came from the security background. He had seen security industry up close, and he felt it was right for change. I had never worked in the security space. I had no experience in that domain at all. But
Sorry, I lost my connection for a bit, but that's fine. A very interesting journey, Pankit. And a couple of things that I noted as you were speaking is to be a CEO, founder of a company, the kind of qualities you need. One is, the leadership skills, the fearless decision making, the independence that you need. I think those things were imbibed in you right from your childhood, where you took the courage of making your own decisions, and your family also supporting you in some sense, even if you went against their wishes. And the second thing is this exposure that you got, moving across cities, moving across companies, and taking up various roles, and not just being tied to one function. I think that gives you a lot of agency when you decide to start your own company. But my next question to you is, a lot of people, even listening to this podcast and otherwise, especially working in IT companies, have this dream of starting up, right? They want to start something of their own. And there is a lot of fear, a lot of hesitation around doing that. What are a few things, or what are a few factors you think enable such people to take this decision? And I'm sure you must have seen a lot of your colleagues taking the plunge like you at various stages of life. And you, I think, at what age did you did you take the decision to start up?
43, 43.
Which is like pretty mature age, but otherwise a lot of youngsters at the age of 25 or 30 or even 35 want to take a plunge. What do you think are a few common factors one should keep in mind when they are taking this decision?
First and foremost, earlier the better. There is a significant risk attached to going out on your own. Earlier in your age, lesser liabilities to worry about, and you can afford to make mistakes, fail, and you still have a path back to corporate if that's what you wanted to do in the first place, any which way. At the age of 43, you won't have too many options. Kids are old enough; they're going to go to college. Parents are old, and just the liabilities keep on, kind of stacking up. So start early is the first thing that I would say. If you have the opportunity, then yes. It always starts with an idea, but idea is only as good as your ability to execute. So what we did is we did get a chance to speak to some of our potential customers even before we started, to kind of walk them through what we were trying to do. Thankfully, we had spent time in the industry, so we had some network and connects that we could reach out to and have a conversation of what we were trying to do, and whether were we actually spoken for, or there was some reality behind the whole story. So kind of getting someone to resonate with would be a great thing if you have the luxury and the opportunity. Third, what we had decided is that we had a very limited capital, right? So even though we put money aside, it was still a very limited capital. So we said, while building a product is very important and going to market with that is going to be important, but it's going to take us time. So we don't want to be in a place where we have no revenue coming in. So whatever sources of revenues that you can identify, because the best funding actually, in my opinion, still is the customer funding. If someone pays the money, for whatever capabilities that you had. So it doesn't matter. So in our case, services, we were willing to take up projects that gave us access to customers, gave us reasons to go back and speak to customers, validate our concepts, at the same time getting us some margins that will fund the product development expense. There is a downside that it kind of tends to become distracting, and then you forget what you started with and might go a different way. But so long as you're steadfast in what you wanted to do, may not be a bad idea unless you have significant capital to work with, which most of us may not be in a position to do. Fourth, I would say having someone within a journey would be great. Single founder companies are generally very difficult to pull off. It is complicated. It is, should I say, lonely. And not being able to share your ideas, get people to resonate with, it becomes difficult. And if you have founders with complementary skill set, even better, because you bring some capability, someone else brings. That's a good thing that I would say. Sixth is, as it's been said multiple times, a product market fit. As soon as you're able to get it, that will be a good story to do. And it's okay to start with something and then find something else to do it. And for us also, if you look at our original pitch decks and what we are wanting to do in security, some of those, while we executed, we did not do a great job of it, but in the process, we found something else that has become our flagship offering, right? It's okay. You will discover your way through it. Broadly, the thesis still remains the same. The problem statement that we are solving still remains the same. But the way we decided to go about it was slightly different than what we started with. So it's okay, when you come from a product technology background, you get too wedded to your idea. It's almost like your baby, and you don't want to throw the baby out of the bathtub, right? So, but it's okay. Sometimes it's okay to throw the baby out because that's not going to give you the results, and you might have spent a few quarters, years building it. But if it is not going to give you the result, it's okay to kind of put it aside and do something completely different, attached to it, or so and so forth.
Totally agreed. In fact, something you said very interesting was that if you don't have enough capital you don't have the luxury to first work on the product and then get it out, you can also start the way you guys started, with some services revenue which goes into funding the product. And you rightly said it's a double-edged sword. Like, it does give you a comfort in terms of capital, but it also lays out a very high risk of getting distracted, and because revenue is what wags the tail. Yeah. What people say, very popular. And sometimes it becomes very difficult to not work on what is generating revenue and work on something which is more long term. So we get lured by that short term incentive of generating revenue.
Yes.
Very interesting, Pankit. In fact, for me personally, in this podcast journey, it is interesting to see that we've had founders who started as early as right out of college, and we're today having a founder who waited for almost 25 years, gathered the experience, the network, and then started up. You talked about the way you managed your capital. You did have some money in the bank and then you started. If you're okay to share, what was the amount that you had in mind till which you will bootstrap? Like, all of us have a budget, like till this amount I'll bootstrap, I'll keep putting money into the company, and if it doesn't work out, then probably I'll call it quits. Did you have that kind of mindset?
Not necessarily, but what we had assumed as the capital that would be sufficient never turns out to be. So we put in 75 lakhs each, and we thought it was going to be enough. And we put another 75 lakhs, thinking it's been enough. And we put another more. So it kind of ends up, you keep kind of adding to it. And at some point of time, then you realize that you are likely to max out. And therefore, you should start looking for other sources of fund. But for a fairly, what I think, 3.5 years of our initial journey, we did not raise any capital. It was just bootstrapped by us. And by the time we had built some traction, so we had a story to kind of take to market by the time.
And how was that experience of raising for the first time? How many doors that you knocked before finally getting to open one?
First round was anyway angels, so it's okay. This was mostly friends and family, and then networks. So it was still kind of okay. But yeah, the first capital that we raised in 2017, while we had the term sheet, I think was in late 16, early 17. By the time we ended up closing the round, it was quite delayed. The 7 crores is what we had raised with Unicorn India Ventures and GBFL as the investor. So that It was almost 4.5 years after we had started the companies and we raised our first structured capital. So, but that was an amazing experience because it forced us to become more structured as a company. Right? It's okay when you're a founder-driven company. When you have venture funds that join you on the journey, there's an expectation of maturity. And though we came from a corporate background and we had corporate structures, there was no oversight to us, right? We were just doing what we felt was right. Now there are additional two pairs of eyes that come and work with you, and there is an answerability to it, but there's also a shoulder that you can lean on for your support. It gave us a lot of credibility in the market space. Think of it, we are a security company, and trust is an implicit argument in that, saying that we work with companies with whom we have trust. So when the VCs came in, that problem kind of got taken care of, saying that if VCs can trust this, then there must be something right about them. So we played on some of that. So I'm not saying that the process was easy. It was really arduous in terms of getting the first structure down. But we had reached a stage where we felt that without it, it would severely hamper our growth aspirations.
Chances of scaling up. And like you mentioned, Pankit, there are a lot of positives to raising capital. People look at raising capital as just raising money. Besides money in the bank, there are a couple of positive factors, like you rightly mentioned, a financial discipline that comes in with the regular MIS updates that you send. The implicit trust that you gather because of these trustworthy names getting attached to your name. Your clients trust you better. Your future employees trust you better. What are some of the downsides of raising capital, in your opinion? Have you faced anything which you felt you could have done without?
Not really in our case, but let's say if you do not have a healthy relationship with your investors, then that will become a significant drag on you. If you have a difference of opinion on everything that you're trying to do, mind you, you will give away a lot of rights, right? So affirmative rights are with them, and especially this all comes to play when you are not doing that. So the company, for whatever reason, is struggling. Then obviously investors get worried about the capital, and therefore they get involved in a different capacity, and then you have this drag that comes in. I haven't seen it, but I've also heard in cases where you deal with a different set of investors when you are doing the fundraise process, but then when the funding is done, the person who gets attached to you or who comes on your board may not be the same individual, or you'll find a complete dissonance. I know a couple of founders who ran into a problem. The guy who came on the board just couldn't see eye to eye, and it was a fairly unhealthy relationship, even when the company was doing it. Because at the end, there are personalities involved, and founders are strong personality by their character. That's how they are. And someone questioning you, no one likes it in the first place, any which way. But when the questioning is done by someone who you feel that may not be experienced or has not lived the problem like you have, then it kind of becomes very.
You're saying so fallout is the only situation where, you should be cautious. If you've raised funds and you're not in tune and not in line with how your investors are thinking.
You have to take them along, right? So the whole idea is that how do you take them along the journey? So how through formal and informal channels you stay in touch. So the comfort is there that you guys are not, and plus now with what's happening in unfortunately the startup ecosystem, where a lot of companies, for varieties of reasons, have not done well, and some shenanigans have been found in terms of misreporting and siphon and that. So obviously they are rightly worried about their capital. So if you find a way to kind of keep them covered and connected, that should be fine.
Right. So to start off, do your background research on the investor, make sure that you and them are aligned in how the company should progress. And on the other side, once they are on board, just over communicate rather than under communicate. So that
and be clear as to who's going to join you on the journey individually, not just the company. Good to ask that question, saying that, hey, you're going on a journey, and if you're going to come on the board, who's going to come? Let's be very clear. But at the end, personalities work together. So if you have the choice, work with someone who you think you are comfortable. Both sides, right? For them and for us.
Besides the financial capital, Pankit, another important capital that a founder needs to build something meaningful is the human capital. How was your experience building human capital for Sequretek, especially the first few core team members and the initial hiring when you did not even raise funds?
So most of the people were people who we knew in our past lives, is who we hired. Um, it, in my opinion, in hindsight, I would have done that. Um, did not a lot of times doesn't pan out the way you envisage it. Specifically, when you think about who we would know people our age who have done similar set of activities. And we worked in large corporates. These folks have worked in the large corporates. Um, we have to anyway tune down a lot of things when we became entrepreneurs, right? So a simple thing that your business card has no value, unlike the IBM or a Wipro business card carries a lot of value. There is no team, it's just you. There are no processes. A lot of it is ad hoc. It kind of gets built over a period of time. So the readjustment ends up becoming fairly tough. So while maybe it was sometimes by force that was the only option available because we were the folks who we knew and they were the ones who would have joined us, or maybe there's only limited capital and therefore you can't hire the ones that you would have wanted and therefore you go to the whatever be the reasons, we went through a lot of churn in the process when we went and hired senior people who did phenomenally well in corporate life, but really struggled to readjust to what a startup world is all about. Right? I always say that it's either judge, jury, prosecutor, or the peon and the proprietor. Both kind of in a day you will do this roles together, right? And not everyone can adjust themselves to one call being a management and the other call sitting and writing a proposal. If you understand, right?
Got it. And in terms of scale today, Sequretek, like where have we come from the time you started to today?
About 470, 480 people, 150 customers, US, Europe, Middle East, Africa, India. Reasonably, we're decently spread out, decently built. We just closed a $8 million round of funding for Media Network, joined us on this round. That's already that capital, north of 6 figure family office. So it's over and above Unicorn and GBF, and we have some amazing investors who come on this journey. And the whole idea with this capital raise is to get our go-to-market engine going. We're fairly well structured in India. The products are, for the most part, built and ready. With this capital, the idea is to get to fast growth and an expansive growth.
Would you say that, Pankit, you were able to envision that the company will reach these heights when you started off?
We would have hoped for it, obviously. It would be wrong for me to say that we were looking to be very small, looking to be big, but did not know the path. A lot of it was figuring out along the way. We had seen other successful entrepreneurs, so there was some roadmap as to how they have built it. But to say that we would have been here and I had all it chalked out and charted out, no. No.
What were the most scariest moments in the initial few years of Sequretek where you almost thought the company is going to die down or shut? Were there any such instances?
Not then, but COVID, yes. COVID was a one. Mostly because, again, security and trust business, a very privacy of data, and it was very important. And we had built the organization in a way that we can sit in one place as a team, all the security, do the work. And what happens when you work from home? And while we had some inkling that this was going to go down, and we started piloting work from home from early March, but we did not know how the customers will react, right? So would they be okay with the same set of systems and processes to be now extended to someone's home and kind of having access? We do not know how the industry will pan out. We don't know how our customers will survive or not. It was really scary times. And majority of our contracts are annual to be renewed at the end of start of the year. So April is when the renewals happen. Like the lockdown was end of March. So come April, there is no one to pick up the phone to tell you that if the contract is on or not, right? So for few weeks, we were completely in limbo. We were offering our capabilities and delivering our projects, but we did not know if there's going to be money at the end of the tunnel, right? So it was very scary period of time for us, very, very scary.
Got it. In terms of your values that you believe in, Pankit, and the values or the culture that you have tried to, develop in your organization, what are a few things that have, passed the test of time? Like in terms of they were true when you started, they're true today, you haven't changed them. You won't change them for
First
forever.
and foremost, I think whatever values I may preach, it's the team that has to resonate with the customers and employees. The fundamental thing I feel is that we have always been transparent. Um, my door is always open. Right now it's closed because there's a lot of noise outside. We have kept that. It's an open door, absolutely open door. Anyone can walk in. You may not like the answer that I will give you, but you will always have an answer.
Got it.
So accessibility is paramount, sometimes the detriment of a lot of other things that you do. But we believe that you should have an answer to whatever your issues are, and that continues to be absolute undying integrity. Right. So I will not do or take something before the start of the queue. So after everyone gets taken care of, and there were periods where for months we did not take salary when we had cash flow issues early on. We made sure, so we borrowed or whatever, and we took care of the employees. And at the end, we may have other resources to take care of our households, but these folks, a lot of kids a lot of our people that work here, they are the first uh, graduates in their family, the first ones to have the jobs. I'm very proud of the fact that a lot of folks that we hire who come from tier 3, tier 4 cities, um, postgraduates, they really are very proud members of their family to have really broken out of whatever the, the chains and shackles that the family had, right? So, but having said that, therefore the means are very limited. And we got to make sure that their homes are completely filled before ours are. Third, and it continues to be a value proposition in terms of how we look at it, is that from a market standpoint, we wanted to be a player that takes, so our byline is simplify security, right? So to Sequretek by simplify security. And the basic ethos is that I want you to do what you do. You run your business and you transfer the security problem to us. Everything that we have tried to do in terms of how we operate, how we engage, how we write contracts are geared towards that thought process. So not to make life difficult for our customers, because it's anyway a complicated business. And there's so much of misrepresentation that happens in both the selling as well as execution, that when the customer and I speak, generally, if it's an escalation call, it's probably the worst of the times because you're under attack, right? So relatively easy for someone to put a gun on the customer, say that you're not going to pay along with anything else. And you are, it's almost like your house is on fire and you call the fire brigade, and the fire brigade says, first pay me the money and then I'll get the fire engine going, right? It doesn't work, right? So the whole idea and ethos was that we want to be ones the most easiest to work with, and then that transcends into everything else that we do, the kind of people that we hire, the kind of products that we build, the kind of outcomes that we guarantee, all of that.
Got it. Any regrets, Pankit? Anything you would have changed in the entire journey, you would have done differently?
It doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter. I'm not a person that by nature don't want to look back because hey, you can't do anything about it. So yeah, it's okay. We are happy to be where we are. Yes, a lot of mistakes. So the way I would look at it is a lot of learnings and mistakes along the way. You are a scrap entrepreneur. You try and do a lot of things. Hard to say no, right? Hard to say no to stuff because you see some pot of gold at the end of that exercise. So how do you kind of pull back after a few mishaps? You kind of learn. And however much anyone would have told us also, unfortunately, I'm telling this right now on a podcast, someone will listen. You will still end up doing it because the lure of doing it is very, very high. You will make your own learnings through the process and you will become slightly more wiser. And just because someone tells you, you won't become wiser. You will become wiser because you go through it. So that's how it is. So no regrets. No regrets, absolutely. Very satisfied with where we are, albeit with a lot of learnings along the way.
Although you've already said it, Pankit, I'll still request you to list out a few mistakes you see early stage founders commit and how if they can avoid it.
The biggest is distraction.
Hmm.
Huge opportunity for distraction, and I'm reading the word both opportunity and distraction together because there's an opportunity which may in the near term give you something, and because money is short, because let's say customer logos are short, let's say hiring talent is short, getting funding is short, all of that you tend to grab to whatever comes your way, and not to say all of them turn out to be bad. Sometimes that distraction may actually give you a path that was not existing. But doing too much of them will definitely be a problem. So being judicious about where you can spare your bandwidth would be one good thing to do. Second, the people, as I already said, right? So we made a big mistake in my mind on hindsight of hiring people who we knew, in some of cases were friends, and who couldn't adjust to a startup life. It's a very, very difficult word. And however much you try and explain that is going to be different, you have to live it to believe as to what different means. And a lot of people after 20 years find it very difficult to readjust, right? And today, I do cold calling. I used to do what took 30 years back. I still do it now. I mean, right now, I don't have a choice. But when I was working for large corporates, I had a choice. There were other teams that were doing it. I would just show up for a meeting, right? I would go there and present. Never had to do that activity. It takes a lot of relearning and unlearning first and relearning to go back to that old days when you basically will call out a customer on the blind and say, by the way, I would like to meet you. And the guy says, nothing, right? So it's not a business. So going wrong with people is a problem that comes. So distraction, going wrong with people, scaling too fast. I always felt we went through that problem and in between we ramped up too fast. You are not, your processes and systems will not catch up to it.
Correct.
Right. So while it is great, and we see some of the recent episodes with startups where they scale too fast, and unfortunately, I don't want to name them, but you get the drift, right?
Correct.
Too fast, you're not able to transcend that. I mean, if you look at all successful companies, they've grown steadily, right? If you take a Wipro, and this is a TCS in the tech world, or Bharti Airtel, or any of these, 20 years, 30 years journey. So it takes time, and I think it's okay. So how do you manage your investors in that okay process? Saying it's okay. I know it's 7 years is what your window horizon is, but in the process of really throwing money behind growth, you will sacrifice a lot in the process. So unless you really have a way to figure out to manage scale, you will have a significant problem coming
up. Got it. So Pankit, now we will move on to our rapid fire section where I'll be asking you a few questions and will request you to give quick, short replies. The first one is 3 traits you would look for in a founding team today if you were to invest your own capital.
Between the two, what's the camaraderie, trust, how well do they gel? Any domain expertise that they bring in, do they have it in them? Because in the end, you're only backing the founder, product market fit may or may not have been established, right? And third, I would say is that see, the fundamental thing as an entrepreneur has is this undying belief on himself, right? There's so many reasons to beat you down. I mean, how it is like almost like a popping ball that one has, right? The game wants to play. You find the head that pops and it comes up again. You've got to find reasons to come back again. So are you able to demonstrate that? The rest all will come, the markets and product and all will come. But this, if you can't gel with each other, then you're dead from day one, right? So if you don't know the industry, then you'll depend a lot on outside, and then it kind of becomes a problem. If you can't get up after you've fallen down, you probably won't survive the first 12 months itself.
Got it. Second one, it is said that you're the average of 5 people you spend most time with. Who are those 5 people for you?
Parents, I think they have a significantly huge influence on me. My friends, I mean, I'm blessed to have so a lot of those friends have invested with me in the company, in spite of me not asking, right? So I've not gone out as a matter of philosophy, I don't want to take money from people I know, because at the end,
Hmm.
none of them
Huge
from
responsibility.
my friends. I had some amazing bosses. Actually, I never had a bad boss in my life. I had an amazing boss, and I tried to pick qualities of them to become who I am today. I don't know how people on the team will tell you how good or bad it is, but I have had some amazing bosses to kind of work with. At the same time, some of the amazing entrepreneurs who had a chance to work or see up close, right? So I've seen how they build organizations, and both good and bad, right? So I've seen what has not worked. At the same time, I've seen some amazing things that these guys have been able to pull off. And that gives me not a roadmap, obviously wrong, but at least gives me some point of view as to what are the
Do
things.
yes.
Right? So,
Yeah, got it. Uh, where do you see Sequretek 5 years from now?
normal growth and all will continue. That's one part. But the one wish I have for Sequretek is India is not known for software products, known for services, and it is definitely not known for security. Right? If you look at security, you think Israel and UK and US and others. If by 2028 end, if we were to change that in the global markets, I'm not saying just because of us, but because of what
Overall.
us, we're able to say that, you know what, India is not only a great place to build services companies, but some of the most amazing security products come out of it. So one of the things that we run as a challenge when we go to global markets is people don't know India in the security context. They would be very okay if you were doing security services outsourcing. That they'll say, okay, yeah, you guys know it. But product coming from India, no. So if you can change that, that would be my 5-year wish list.
Got it. Very nice. One thing you want to change about the startup ecosystem in India?
More products, more products to come. At the end, transformation will happen when IP gets created. So not to say IP is not getting created in this place. We may have replicated the models from outside to make them work in India. It is fine. That also is needed. But if the country has to fundamentally shift, it has to get knowledge from within to be transferred outside. And that's where value creation happens 1,000-fold, 10,000-fold.
Correct.
That's my personal opinion.
Got it. 3 investors you look up to and why?
I have some amazing investors myself, so I don't want to go anywhere else. I have Wipro India, GVFL, Media, SFO, India. The thing that more than 3 investors, I would look at investors who are operationally non-intrusive. Right? I mean, it's people who don't come every day morning saying, I'll switch to Hindi for a while and come back. Kitna becha, kitna kharida, kitne ko hire kiya. You have no value to it. And it just, it's like a class monitor hanging over your paper as to how you write. What I would like to have as an investor is someone who's there whenever you need. So they have to be one phone call away, and that's the first trait that I will look at it. If I call, they got to pick up the phone. Just in that every time, but yeah, that's what I get. You get the drift of it.
They're accessible, basically.
They're accessible, right? Second, they are the ones out evangelizing you even without you knowing. Right? So that's the second thing I will do. They are in more forums than I will ever get a chance to be. Right? They're meeting fellow investors, they are meeting market, they're meeting government officials. They are out there speaking to a bunch of things. They got to be your evangelists. That's the second thing that I would expect. Right? And third, this is a treadmill where you will, assuming you will keep raising money, they have to be your torchbearers to facilitate that process, almost of a handoff, if nothing else, saying that, you know what, you are the seed guys, you are Series A, you are Series B. We will work with you because that's not our core competence.
Correct.
This is not, I'm not the serial entrepreneur, my fourth gig and the fifth gig, that I know the entire ecosystem. This is a first generation entrepreneur. So I'm old, but I'm a first generation entrepreneur, right? So this is something that they do for day in, day out. They have the networks, they have the connects. So that's what I look at it. And obviously they have to hold me accountable and all of that. That's a given. That's not a big deal.
Got it. No, makes a lot of sense, Pankit. And I think the quality of investors you have on board contributes significantly to the success of the startup.
Absolutely. No doubt about it.
3 founders you idolize and why?
So I had an opportunity to work with or interact with Azim Premji while at Wipro. So I was a very junior sales guy and in the US. And one trait he had is that whenever we used to travel to the US, if you are the local sales guy, it was your job to pick him up from the airport, drop him to the hotel, pick him up next day, take him for a meeting, and hand it over to the local sales guy. And this is way back, 2001 or 2 time frame. And
Okay.
I used to feel that why would he want me to drive? He can get a rent a car. Maybe landing at 11:30, 12 in the night, and I'm staying quite far and I have to drive.
Uh-huh.
Like, why is this conserving money so much? What does he gain by meeting me? Only to realize that on the journey, he will have a bunch of conversation about you, about family, about market, about the economy. That was his way to stay in touch with what's happening without none of his middle level being there to varnish the message. See, how do you get otherwise as a chairman of the organization? How do you know what's happening on the ground? Right? Because he will have some guy reporting to him, who has someone reporting to him, who has someone, and you are just way below that. The message is not going to go up ever. Right? So coming down to my level to have a conversation at my level is happens only in the car with just 2 of you. That's it. Right? So and a bunch of other things. But to me, this was one, how do you build a 10, 15, $20 billion company? You build by being in touch with everything that's around. And this is the smartest way to do it. And the guy would travel like crazy, he would take meetings like crazy. He was reasonably old at that point of time itself. But his zeal to meet customers, go prepared, have a conversation, loved it. So that's, I would say, to me, he's the torchbearer of how I would like to model myself too as an individual. So that's one I would say. The second would be the controversial one, Elon Musk. Okay. Whatever his political leniencies and leanings to, the guy is just brilliant. And people will say, he did not start Tesla, he did not do this. Doesn't matter. You take a shitty company and you make something out of it, right? And something where no one wanted to do it, whether it's SpaceX or excluding a bit as a different issue. But just brilliant, right? To create an enterprise in a short period of time in very, very risky areas. And both are extremely risky, right? People have not made money in automobiles for God knows how long, right? And to create enterprises like these, the guy has to have some guts, some understanding. And I've seen some of his articles and I've heard him. He knows the subject. He spends time. He understands. He spent time trying to understand astrophysics before he went out building SpaceX. Actually, that much involved in completely diverse set of businesses and being successful at it. If I'm not technologically inclined individual, but if I can even invite 100 or 1,000 of it, I'd probably do a great justice to my organization. The second person is whom I will. Third, more than an entrepreneur, I had heard this story from Abdul Kalam. It's fairly multiple times been spoken about the failure of the PSLV-3. It did not take off, right? And a lot of foreign media was there, and it was a mega failure right in front of a live television, a live national broadcast. And he says that there was a press conference call, and he was the mission director. And Satish Dhawan, who was then the chairman of ISRO, said, let's go and have a session there. And he said, I was so down in dumps, and so I was willing to go off the stage. And Satish Dhawan says, you go at the back, and he goes on the front. And he takes the complete blame for it, right? As a leader, he says, my fault, my problem. We'll come back in 12 months, and we'll make it happen. Lo and behold, 12 months later, successful launch. Same press conference, We again start walking. Abdul Kalam stays back. He said, now you on the stage and you speak. And he goes in the back, right? So an old boss of mine had told me that, you always shine in reflected glory. As leaders, you are more like the moon than the sun. Right? They don't have the light of their own reflected glory, right? So if the team does well, you've done well, right? So people like these, if you find around, to me, that's a role model. Satish Dhawan is a role model. The boss
Correct.
is a role model who never wanted limelight, and I would rather have that kind of a culture where the limelight is the individual who does the work and not the entrepreneur.
No, very well said, Sati. Well said, Pankit. And we got some very interesting stories in the course of understanding your role models. An interesting white space where Indian founders are not solving for right now.
I would say for us,
Business can be built.
agri-tech and health tech.
Hmm.
Agri and health, for a country of our scale, size, problem that we have, agri, health, water, basics, this is huge volume. These are not first world country problems. There will be very little interest for them to do anything about it. If you solve it, you'll not solve it just for India, but the entire African continent and the Southeast Asia and the Latin America. And you will have overnight a big. So EV is a first world country problem. Right? We struggle with roads. EV is a good problem Elon Musk can solve, and it's needed in that part of the market. We are okay with scooters. EV scooters are fine. That's okay. We don't need EV cars. There's no road to drive EV cars in the first place, right? But there's a huge problem with the food on the table, the quality of food, with the climate change happening. Most of these will become dust balls. There's so much of problem that is sitting out there. We need to figure out the answers that are relevant to our economy and economies like us, which is where we will, for the next 20, 25 years, if India has to really leapfrog, that's where it has to be. And that's why I look up to Israel in that way, that they have really worked hard on the agri problem. And they looked at it from their own small window of that being a desert nation. How do I conserve water and the salinity and some of those challenges that come with Israel? But we are no different, right? So, with water is a huge problem in this country right now, right? So either we have too much of it or we have nothing of it, right? I think I just read an article recently that in Maharashtra itself, there are some 17, 18 districts that are drought prone right now, right? Already declared drought prone. And the monsoons just got over. Think about it for the rest of the 8-9 months that are left before the rains come back again. How can you solve the problem?
My last question, Pankit, is what are the top 3 books you would recommend to people aspiring to be founders or early stage founders?
Let me be candid. I'm not a very big reader of books. I somehow never, you can say, I never like Gyan books. There's so much of quantification that happens. I would rather, if you see me today, what's open on my screens would be a Wall Street Journal, a New York Times, or a CNN, or an NTT. Being aware of what's happening around you, right? Being contextually aware. I am a guy that wakes up in the morning. The first thing I do is I read a newspaper end to end. Right? I want to be aware of what's happening politically, what's happening economically, who's buying home, which companies are raising capital, what problems are being solved. To me, being aware of that gives me points of conversation when I go out and look at market. Being aware of that allows me to identify potential customers that I will go and pitch to. Gives me a point of view to see which markets to go and which markets not to go. The rest, Gyan, maybe at up to 65, I read about it, but right now. So not to say I've not read it, but I'm just not a firm believer that reading a book will give a bright idea saying, okay, I'll change my behavior X, Y, and Z. In the 20s, you can change. In the 50s, very difficult to change.
Very, very interesting viewpoint there. But overall, very interesting conversation, Pankit. Thank you so much to give us so much time. And I think the listeners will take away a lot of important nuggets from this show, this episode. Once again, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me. You have a good day.